The stagecoach shuddered to a halt in front of the dusty station in Paso Robles, California, and Amelia Evanston stepped down into a world so foreign it might as well have been the moon. Her black mourning dress already gathering the fine brown dust that seemed to coat everything in this God-forsaken territory on this scorching day in June of 1874. She had sold everything back in Boston. The modest home her parents left her, the furniture, even her mother's pearl necklace that she had sworn she would never part with. All of it gone to pay for passage west and to purchase the small millinery shop that an old family friend had written about before he passed. The shop came with living quarters above it, and that was more than most women traveling alone could hope for. Amelia was 23 years old, unmarried, and now completely without family after the fever took her parents within days of each other last winter. There was nothing left for her in Boston but memories that cut like glass every time she walked past familiar places. The driver handed down her 2 large trunks with a grunt, eyeing her with the mixture of pity and curiosity that she had grown accustomed to during the long journey. A woman traveling alone was unusual enough. A woman traveling alone to set up business in a rough California town was practically unheard of. "You sure you got someone meeting you, miss?" the driver asked, his weathered face creased with concern. "I will manage," Amelia said, lifting her chin. She had been managing for 6 months now, and she would continue to manage because there was simply no other choice. The driver tipped his hat and climbed back onto the stagecoach. Amelia stood on the wooden sidewalk, surrounded by her trunks, watching the dust settle as the coach disappeared down the main street. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly, and she was suddenly very aware of how inappropriate her heavy Boston clothing was for this climate. Around her, Paso Robles bustled with activity. Cowboys rode past on horseback, their spurs jingling. Women in simpler dresses than hers hurried along with market baskets. The air smelled of horse, dust, and something cooking that made her stomach remind her she had not eaten since dawn. She pulled the letter from her reticule and read the address again. The Miller Building on Spring Street, 2nd floor. According to the crude map the station master in San Francisco had drawn for her, Spring Street was 2 blocks north. The trunks were far too heavy for her to carry, but she had learned not to wait for help that might never come. Those look mighty heavy for a lady. Amelia turned to find a cowboy standing a respectful distance away, his hat in his hands. He was tall and lean, with sun-darkened skin and eyes the color of the summer sky. There was something careful in the way he held himself, as though he was very aware that his presence might be unwelcome. His clothes were worn but clean, and despite the dust that covered everything in this town, his boots showed signs of recent polishing. "They are heavy," Amelia acknowledged, "but I will manage." "I do not doubt that, madam, but there is no shame in accepting help when it is freely offered." His voice was gentle, with a slight drawl that marked him as someone who had spent considerable time in Texas or perhaps further south. "My name is Lucas Newfield. I work at the livery stable just down the street, and I happened to see you arrive. Are you heading somewhere in town?" There was something in his eyes that made Amelia pause. Not the calculating look she had endured from men who thought a woman alone was fair game, but genuine concern. Still, she had learned to be cautious. "The Miller Building on Spring Street," she said. "I am perfectly capable of making arrangements for my trunks." "I am sure you are," Lucas said, and to her surprise he smiled. It was a warm smile that reached his eyes and made small crinkles at the corners. "But the freight office is closed for another hour, and these trunks will sit here gathering dust and possibly walking away on their own if someone with less honest intentions happens by. Spring Street is only 2 blocks. I could carry them there for you, and you could keep your eye on me the whole time to make sure I do not run off with your belongings." Despite herself, Amelia felt her lips twitch toward a smile. "You make a fair point, Mr. Newfield. Lucas, please, and you are Amelia Evanston." "Well, Miss Evanston, let me help you with these trunks before the sun bakes us both into the sidewalk." He hefted one trunk onto his shoulder with surprising ease and managed to get a good grip on the other. Amelia walked beside him, acutely aware of the curious glances from passers-by. A woman alone was noteworthy enough. A woman being helped by Lucas Newfield seemed to be even more interesting, judging by the looks they were receiving. "You are new to Paso Robles," Lucas said as they walked. It was not a question. "I arrived precisely 7 minutes ago," Amelia replied. "Planning to stay? I have purchased the millinery shop in the Miller building." Lucas nearly stumbled, and one of the trunks shifted on his shoulder. He recovered quickly, but there was surprise written clearly across his face. "You bought Miller's hat shop?" "I had heard someone from back east purchased it, but I confess I expected a man, or at least a married couple." "I am quite alone," Amelia said, hearing the edge in her own voice, "and I am quite capable of running a business." "I meant no offense," Lucas said quickly. "I am just surprised is all. It takes courage to come west alone and set up shop. More courage than most people have, man or woman." They had reached the Miller building, a 2-story structure that looked slightly more prosperous than its neighbors. The ground floor housed a dry goods store, and beside it was the entrance to the stairs leading to the second floor. Lucas set down both trunks carefully and pulled a handkerchief from his pocket to wipe his brow. "Thank you for your help, Mr. Newfield," Amelia said, reaching into her reticule. "Please allow me to compensate you for your time." "I would not dream of taking your money," Lucas said, shaking his head. "It was my pleasure to help." He settled his hat back on his head and looked at her for a long moment. "Miss Evanston, I hope you will not think me forward, but Paso Robles can be a rough town for anyone new, especially someone on their own. If you need help with anything at all, I am at the livery stable most days from dawn until supper. Sam Patterson owns it. Anyone can point you in the right direction." "That is very kind," Amelia said, surprised by the sincerity in his offer. "Welcome to Paso Robles," Lucas said, tipping his hat. Then he turned and walked back the way they had come, leaving Amelia standing beside her trunks, watching him go and wondering about the curious warmth that had settled in her chest. The shop and living quarters were smaller than she had imagined, but cleaner than she had feared. The previous owner's widow had apparently kept the place tidy even after her husband's death. There was a small kitchen, a bedroom barely large enough for a bed and wardrobe, and a sitting area that she supposed could serve as a workroom. Downstairs, the shop itself had a front room with a counter and display area, and a back room for storage and additional workspace. Amelia spent the rest of the afternoon and evening unpacking and taking inventory of the supplies that had come with the shop. There were bolts of ribbon, boxes of feathers and artificial flowers, hat forms in various sizes, and all the tools she would need to create fashionable headwear. Her mother had taught her the trade, and Amelia had worked alongside her in the small shop they ran in Boston. She had skill and experience, but whether that would be enough in this rough western town remained to be seen. That night, lying in the unfamiliar bed and listening to the unfamiliar sounds of Paso Robles settling down for the night, Amelia allowed herself to feel the full weight of her solitude. She had been brave and practical throughout the journey, but now, alone in the darkness, she could admit that she was terrified. Everything she had was invested in this shop. If it failed, she would have nothing and nowhere to go. And even if it succeeded, what kind of life awaited her here? A solitary existence, working and surviving, but never truly living. She pushed the thoughts away and forced herself to think of practical matters. Tomorrow she would clean the shop properly, arrange the display area, and perhaps make a few sample hats to put in the window. She would introduce herself to the neighboring shopkeepers and begin building the relationships that would be essential to her success. She would do what needed to be done, just as she had been doing for months now. Morning came bright and early, sunlight streaming through the thin curtains and bringing with it the already warm promise of another hot day. Amelia, dressed in one of her simpler dresses, pinned her dark hair into a practical bun and set to work. By mid-morning, she had the shop gleaming and several hat forms arranged artfully in the window, each adorned with ribbons and flowers to showcase what the shop could offer. She was in the back room, sorting through a box of lace trim, when she heard the shop bell ring. Wiping her hands on her apron, she hurried to the front room to find a woman about her own age examining one of the displays with interest. The woman was pretty, with auburn hair and a sprinkling of freckles across her nose, dressed in a simple calico dress that was far more practical than anything Amelia owned. "Good morning," Amelia said. "May I help you?" The woman turned and smiled warmly. "You must be Miss Evanston." "I am Sarah Garrett. My family owns the dry goods store downstairs. I wanted to welcome you to Paso Robles and to the building." "How kind of you," Amelia said, genuinely touched. "Please call me Amelia. And you must call me Sarah." "I brought you some bread and preserves," Sarah said, producing a basket from behind her back. "I thought you might not have had time to stock your kitchen yet." Amelia felt unexpected tears prick her eyes. It was such a simple gesture, but after months of coldness and solitude, this casual kindness struck deep. "Thank you," she managed. "That is very thoughtful." Sarah waved away her thanks. "It is what neighbors do. Besides, I am selfishly glad to have another young woman nearby." Paso Robles has more than its share of cowboys and miners, but women of business are rare. "Are you truly planning to run this shop yourself?" "I am," Amelia said firmly. "I learned the millinery trade from my mother back in Boston. I know it will be different here, but I hope there is a market for quality hats." "Oh, there absolutely is," Sarah assured her. "The previous owner did well enough, and between you and me, his work was adequate at best. If you have real skill, you will have customers." The ranchers' wives and daughters come to town regularly, and they are always looking for something finer than what the general stores carry. They talked for nearly an hour, and by the time Sarah left to return to her own shop, Amelia felt considerably more optimistic. Sarah had promised to spread the word about the new milliner, and she had invited Amelia to join her family for dinner later in the week. It was the first real social invitation Amelia had received since leaving Boston, and she accepted gratefully. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Amelia threw herself into her work, creating a selection of hats to display and taking careful note of what the women of Paso Robles wore so she could tailor her creations to local tastes. She had her first customers at the end of the week, 2 ranch wives who needed new Sunday hats. They were pleased with her work and paid promptly, and more importantly, they promised to recommend her shop to their friends. Sarah proved to be a true friend, introducing Amelia to other shopkeepers and helping her navigate the social complexities of the town. Through Sarah, Amelia learned that Paso Robles was a growing community, benefiting from both ranching and the agricultural possibilities of the region. The town was rough around the edges, but trying to become more civilized, and people like Sarah's family were the backbone of that effort. Amelia did not see Lucas Newfield again for nearly 2 weeks, and she told herself firmly that she was not looking for him, and certainly not disappointed by his absence. She was far too busy establishing her business to think about the kind cowboy who had helped her on her first day. Except that she did think about him, more often than she cared to admit, and she found herself glancing toward the livery stable whenever she walked past on her errands. Then, on a Tuesday afternoon, the shop bell rang, and there he was, hat in hand, looking uncertain in a way that was oddly endearing. "Miss Evanston," he said, "I hope I am not disturbing you." "Not at all," Amelia said, conscious of the sudden quickening of her heartbeat. "What can I do for you, Mr. Newfield?" "Lucas, please," he said. "I was hoping you might help me with a problem. My sister is getting married next month, and I want to give her something special. I thought perhaps a hat. She has always wanted something truly fine, and I know she would be thrilled." "I would be happy to help," Amelia said warmly. "Tell me about your sister. What does she look like? What colors does she favor?" Lucas described his sister Margaret with obvious affection. She was younger than him by 5 years, making her about 22, with fair hair and blue eyes. She was marrying a good man who owned a small ranch about 10 miles from town, and Lucas clearly approved of the match. As he talked, Amelia found herself sketching ideas, her mind already working on the perfect design. "This is beautiful," Lucas said, looking at her sketch, "but it must be expensive. I have been saving, and I can pay whatever it costs." "Let me make it first," Amelia said. "Then we can discuss price. When is the wedding?" 4 weeks from Saturday. "That gives me plenty of time. I will make something truly special for your sister." Lucas smiled at her, and Amelia felt that curious warmth again spreading through her chest. "Thank you. This means a great deal to me. Margaret helped raise me after our mother died, and I want her to know how much I appreciate everything she did." "You are very close to your family," Amelia observed. "I am. They are everything to me." He paused, then added, "Have you settled in well?" "I have been meaning to stop by and see how you were managing, but I did not want to intrude." "I have managed quite well," Amelia said. "Sarah Garrett has been wonderfully helpful, and the shop is beginning to attract customers." "I am glad to hear it. Sarah is good people. Her whole family is." Lucas shifted his weight, still holding his hat. "Miss Evanston, I wonder if I might ask you something?" "Of course." "There is a dance this Saturday evening at the church hall. Nothing fancy, just a social gathering with music and refreshments. I would be honored if you would allow me to escort you." Amelia's first instinct was to refuse. She had not come west looking for romance or companionship. She had come to build a new life on her own terms, to prove that she could survive and thrive without depending on anyone. But as she looked at Lucas, at the hope and nervousness in his blue eyes, she found herself wanting to say yes. Not because she needed an escort or because she was lonely, though she was, but because something about this man made her want to take the risk. "I would like that very much," she heard herself say. Lucas's face lit up with a smile that transformed his features. "Truly, that is wonderful. I will call for you at 6 o'clock if that suits you." 6 o'clock will be perfect." After Lucas left, Amelia stood in the quiet shop and wondered what she had just done. She had sworn to herself that she would focus only on her business, that she could not afford the distraction of emotional entanglements. But it was only a dance, she told herself. One evening of normal social activity. It did not have to mean anything more, except that she knew, even as she thought it, that she was lying to herself. Saturday arrived, and Amelia found herself more nervous than she had been since arriving in Paso Robles. She had one dress that was suitable for a social gathering, a deep blue silk that brought out the color of her eyes. It was not as fancy as what she might have worn to a Boston social event, but it was pretty and well made, and when she examined herself in the mirror, She was satisfied with what she saw. Lucas arrived precisely at 6, looking handsome in clean trousers, a pressed shirt, and a jacket that was clearly his best. His hair was neatly combed and he smelled faintly of soap and leather. "You look beautiful," he said simply, and the sincerity in his voice made Amelia blush. "Thank you. You look very nice yourself." The church hall was only a short walk away, and the evening was pleasant, the terrible heat of the day giving way to cooler temperatures. As they walked, Lucas pointed out various landmarks and told her stories about the town. He had come to Paso Robles 5 years ago, drifting west from Texas after a difficult few years following the war. He had been only 17 when the war ended, too young to have fought, but old enough to feel the aftermath in lost opportunities and a changed world. "I worked cattle drives for a few years," he told her. "Saved my money and brought my sister out here when I had enough to get established. She married once before, but her first husband died of pneumonia their first winter here. It nearly broke her, but then she met Thomas, and he helped her find joy again." "That must have been very hard for both of you," Amelia said softly. "It was. But it taught me that life keeps moving forward whether we are ready or not. The question is whether we move with it or get left behind." They had reached the church hall, and Amelia could hear music and laughter spilling out into the evening air. Lucas offered her his arm, and she took it, feeling the solid strength of him beneath her hand. The hall was crowded with people, and the atmosphere was cheerful and welcoming. A small group of musicians played fiddle and guitar in one corner, and couples were already dancing. Sarah spotted Amelia immediately and hurried over, her eyes bright with curiosity and approval. "Amelia, I am so glad you came, and Lucas, good to see you." "Evening, Sarah," Lucas said. "Is your family here?" "Everyone except Papa, who is minding the store. Come, let me introduce Amelia to some more people." The next hour passed in a whirl of introductions. Amelia met ranchers and shopkeepers, their wives and daughters, the schoolteacher, the doctor, and what seemed like half the population of Paso Robles. Everyone was curious about her, and she answered the same questions over and over. Where was she from? What brought her west? Was she planning to stay? She smiled until her face hurt and tried to remember names and faces, knowing that these people would be her neighbors and hopefully her customers for years to come. Through it all, Lucas remained at her side, a quiet and reassuring presence. He did not hover or monopolize her attention, but he was always there when she needed him, smoothly steering conversations when they turned too personal or rescuing her when someone became too insistent about learning her whole life story. Finally, the musicians struck up a waltz and Lucas turned to her with a slightly nervous smile. "Would you care to dance?" "I would," Amelia said, and let him lead her onto the floor. He was a better dancer than she had expected, leading her smoothly through the steps. They did not talk, but Amelia was acutely aware of his hand on her waist, of how perfectly they seemed to fit together, of the way he looked at her with an expression that made her heart race. "I am glad you said yes," Lucas said softly as the dance ended. "To the dance, I mean. To being here with me." "I am glad I said yes too," Amelia admitted. They danced 3 more times over the course of the evening, and in between, Lucas introduced her to his friends and made sure she always had refreshment. Amelia had not felt this light, this almost happy, in longer than she could remember. The weight of grief and worry that had been her constant companion for so many months seemed to lift, at least for these few hours. As the evening wound down and Lucas walked her back to her rooms, Amelia found herself wishing the night did not have to end. They stopped in front of the Miller building, and Lucas released her arm reluctantly. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," Amelia said. I cannot remember the last time I enjoyed myself so much." "The pleasure was entirely mine," Lucas said. "Miss Evanston, Amelia, I hope you will allow me to call on you again. I know you came here to build your business and I respect that, but I would very much like to spend more time with you." Amelia knew she should be cautious. She had learned hard lessons about relying on others, about letting people get too close. But when she looked at Lucas, at the hope and honesty in his face, she could not bring herself to push him away. "I would like that," she said softly. Lucas smiled, and Amelia thought she could happily spend the rest of her life finding new ways to make him smile like that. The thought should have terrified her, but instead, it felt right in a way that nothing had felt right in a very long time. "Good night, Amelia," Lucas said, and brought her hand to his lips in a gesture that was both old-fashioned and utterly charming. "Good night, Lucas." She watched him walk away, then climb the stairs to her rooms, her heart full of something that felt dangerously close to hope. Over the next few weeks, Lucas became a regular presence in Amelia's life. He called on her in the evenings after she closed the shop, and they would walk through town together, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about his life, about growing up in Texas and the years of wandering before he found a home in Paso Robles. She told him about Boston, about her parents and the life she had left behind, and found that talking about them to Lucas was less painful than she had expected. He helped her with small tasks around the shop, fixing a sticky drawer and replacing a broken window pane. He never overstepped or made her feel incapable, but simply offered assistance when it was needed. In return, Amelia worked on his sister's wedding hat, pouring all her skill and artistry into creating something truly special. It was a beautiful creation in ivory and pale blue, with delicate silk flowers and ribbons that would perfectly complement Margaret's coloring. Sarah watched the developing relationship with obvious approval and a certain amount of maternal concern, despite being Amelia's age. "Lucas is a good man," she told Amelia one afternoon when she stopped by the shop. "Everyone in town respects him. He works hard, treats people fairly, and he has been nothing but kind to his sister. But Amelia, I feel I should tell you that he has not courted anyone seriously in all the time I have known him. There was a woman a few years back before I moved here, but it ended badly. I do not know the details, but I know it hurt him." "He has not mentioned anyone," Amelia said, feeling an uncomfortable twist of jealousy at the thought of Lucas with another woman. "He probably will when he is ready. I just wanted you to know that if he seems cautious, there is a reason. But the way he looks at you, Amelia, I have never seen him look at anyone like that." Amelia treasured those words and turned them over in her mind during the quiet moments of her days. She was falling in love with Lucas Newfield, and the realization was both exhilarating and terrifying. She had not come west looking for love. She had come to escape the suffocating weight of grief and to build something of her own. But love had found her anyway, in the form of a gentle cowboy with sky-blue eyes and a smile that made her believe in possibilities again. One evening, as they sat on a bench outside the shop watching the sun set over the rolling hills, Lucas took her hand. It was the first time he had done more than offer his arm or help her over rough ground, and Amelia felt her pulse quicken at the contact. "I need to tell you something," Lucas said, his voice serious. "I should have told you before now, but I was afraid it would change how you see me." Amelia's heart clenched with sudden fear. "What is it?" "A few years ago, before I settled in Paso Robles, I was engaged to be married. Her name was Catherine, and I thought she was everything I wanted. But when she learned I was planning to head west, she gave me an ultimatum. Stay in Texas and give up my dreams of something better, or leave and lose her." "You chose to leave," Amelia said softly. "I did." and she married someone else within 6 months. For a long time, I told myself it did not matter, that I had made the right choice. But the truth is, it did hurt. I thought I loved her, and I thought she loved me. Learning that her love was conditional, that it could not survive me wanting to build a better life, that was hard. "I am sorry you went through that," Amelia said, squeezing his hand. "I am telling you this because I want you to understand why I have been cautious. Why it took me 2 weeks to work up the courage to ask you to the dance. I was afraid of being hurt again, afraid of wanting something that could not last." He turned to look at her, his blue eyes intense. "But Amelia, from the moment I saw you step off that stagecoach, so brave and determined, I knew you were different. And every moment I have spent with you since has only confirmed it. You are the strongest, most remarkable woman I have ever met, and I am falling in love with you." Amelia's breath caught. She had hoped, had sensed that his feelings ran as deep as hers, but hearing the words spoken aloud was almost overwhelming. "Lucas," she whispered, "I am falling in love with you too, and it terrifies me. I came here to be independent, to prove I could manage on my own. I swore I would not need anyone." "You do not need me," Lucas said gently. "You are perfectly capable of managing on your own, and I would never want to take that independence from you. But Amelia, needing someone and choosing to be with someone are two different things." "You do not need me, but I hope you choose me anyway." Amelia felt tears sliding down her cheeks, but they were good tears, healing tears. "I choose you," she said. "I choose you, Lucas Newfield." He pulled her into his arms, and Amelia rested her head against his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. She had come west alone, determined to build a life on her own terms. But now she understood that being alone and being independent were not the same thing. She could be strong and capable and still choose to share her life with someone. She could build her business and her future while also building something with Lucas. "I want to court you properly," Lucas said into her hair. "I want everyone in Paso Robles to know that you are mine and I am yours. If that is what you want too." "It is exactly what I want," Amelia said. Margaret's wedding arrived, and Amelia attended as Lucas's guest, wearing the ivory and blue hat she had created. Margaret was delighted with her wedding gift, crying happy tears as she embraced Amelia and thanked her profusely. The wedding was simple but lovely, held in the small church with a reception in the same hall where Amelia had attended her first dance. Amelia met the rest of Lucas's family, including his younger brother who worked on Margaret's new husband's ranch, and was welcomed warmly into their circle. She watched Lucas dance with his sister at the reception, saw the love and pride on his face, and felt her heart swell with affection for this man who cared so deeply for his family. When he returned to her side and pulled her into his arms for the next dance, she knew with absolute certainty that this was where she belonged. Summer gave way to autumn, and Amelia's shop flourished. She had a steady stream of customers now, and her reputation for quality work had spread beyond Paso Robles to the surrounding ranches and even to some of the neighboring towns. She hired a young woman named Clara to help in the shop 3 days a week, giving her time to focus on the more intricate custom orders that were becoming her specialty. Lucas continued to work at the livery stable, but he had ambitions beyond caring for other people's horses. He had been saving money for years, and he shared with Amelia his dream of buying a small ranch of his own, of raising horses and maybe cattle. Amelia encouraged him, helping him plan and calculate, her Boston education proving useful in ways she had never expected. They spent as much time together as their work allowed, and the town came to accept them as a couple. There was some gossip, of course. There always was in a small town. Some people whispered that Amelia had come west specifically to catch a husband, despite all evidence to the contrary. Others suggested that Lucas was after her shop and whatever money she might have. But most people, seeing the genuine affection between them, were simply happy for them both. Winter arrived, and with it, slower business at the shop. Women still needed hats, but they were not ordering the elaborate creations they favored in warmer months. Amelia used the slower period to experiment with new designs and to teach Clara more advanced techniques. She also spent more time with Lucas, and as the days grew shorter and colder, their relationship deepened. One evening in late December, Lucas arrived at the shop with a wagon instead of on foot. "I want to show you something," he said, his eyes bright with excitement. "Will you come with me?" Amelia bundled up in her warmest cloak and let him help her into the wagon. They drove out of town, heading east into the rolling hills. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, and Amelia leaned against Lucas's side, savoring his warmth and the quiet beauty of the landscape. After about 20 minutes, Lucas pulled the wagon to a stop beside a small creek. There was a grove of oak trees, their branches bare but graceful, and beyond it, a flat area that would be perfect for building. "This is it," Lucas said, his voice full of wonder. "This is the land I am buying, 160 acres with good water and enough grazing for a decent-sized herd. The sale will be final next week." Amelia climbed down from the wagon and walked to the edge of the flat area, turning slowly to take it all in. She could see the potential here, could imagine a house and barn, corrals and pastures. It was beautiful and wild and full of possibility. "It is perfect," she said. "Lucas, this is wonderful. You must be so excited." "I am," he said, coming to stand beside her. "But Amelia, I did not bring you here just to show you the land. I brought you here because I want you to help me plan where to put the house. I want you to tell me how many rooms we will need and where you want the kitchen windows to face." Amelia turned to look at him, her heart suddenly pounding. "Lucas," he took both her hands in his, and even in the fading light she could see the love and hope in his eyes. "Amelia Evanston, I love you with everything I am. You are strong and brave and beautiful, and you make me want to be a better man. I know you came west to be independent, to build your own life, and I am not asking you to give up any of that. You can keep your shop, expand it if you want. We can build the house close enough to town that you can get there easily. But I am asking you to build a life with me too, to make this ranch our ranch, this dream our dream. Amelia, will you marry me?" Amelia felt tears streaming down her face, and she was laughing and crying at the same time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, Lucas, I will marry you." He pulled her into his arms and kissed her, and Amelia felt the last walls around her heart crumble. She had been so determined to stay independent, to prove she did not need anyone. But standing here in Lucas's arms on land that would be theirs together, she understood that independence did not mean being alone. It meant having the strength to choose your own path, and she was choosing this path, this man, this life. They were married in early March of 1875, in the same small church where Margaret had married a few months before. Amelia wore a dress of cream-colored silk that she had sewn herself, and a hat adorned with silk roses and ribbons. Sarah was her maid of honor, and Margaret stood beside her as well. Lucas's brother stood up with him, along with Sam Patterson from the livery stable. The church was full of people who had become friends over the past 9 months. Ranchers and shopkeepers, their families, people who had welcomed Amelia into their community and made her feel like she belonged. As she walked down the aisle toward Lucas, seeing the love and joy on his face, Amelia felt a profound sense of gratitude for the journey that had brought her here. The grief and loss that had driven her west had not disappeared, but it had transformed into something else. It had given her the courage to start over, and in starting over, she had found something she had not even known she was looking for. The reception was held at the church hall, and it seemed like the entire town turned out to celebrate with them. There was music and dancing, food and laughter, and Amelia felt surrounded by warmth and goodwill. When she and Lucas finally slipped away in the early evening, heading back to the rooms above the shop that would be their home until their house was built, Amelia felt happier than she had ever imagined possible. "I love you, Mrs. Newfield," Lucas said as he carried her over the threshold, following the tradition. "I love you too, Mr. Newfield," Amelia replied, and kissed her husband with all the passion and hope in her heart. They spent the next few months dividing their time between work and building their future. Lucas continued at the livery stable, but he also began the work of establishing his ranch. He bought his first small herd of cattle and began breaking ground for the house. Amelia ran her shop, with Clara now working 5 days a week and proving to be not just capable but genuinely talented. The extra help gave Amelia time to assist Lucas with the ranch, to learn about this new life they were building together. The house took shape slowly over the spring and summer. Lucas did much of the work himself, with help from his brother and friends. Amelia designed the layout, making sure there was good light in the kitchen and a room that could serve as her workroom when she needed to work from home. They built it with care and love, knowing that this would be the home where they would raise their family. By autumn, the house was finished enough to move into, though there were still details to complete. It was a simple ranch house, single-story and sprawling, built to withstand the heat of summer and the occasional cold winter. Amelia furnished it with a mixture of pieces she ordered from San Francisco and things Lucas built himself. The result was a home that reflected both of them, practical and comfortable but also beautiful. Amelia kept the shop, just as Lucas had promised she could. Clara proved capable of managing it for the 2 or 3 days a week when Amelia worked from the ranch, and Amelia found that she loved the balance. She loved her business and took pride in it, but she also loved being at the ranch with Lucas, learning about cattle and horses, helping with the work, and building something together. Their first anniversary found them hosting a small dinner at the ranch house. Margaret and her husband came, as did Sarah and her new beau, a young lawyer who had recently arrived in town. As Amelia looked around the table at these people who had become family, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude for how much her life had changed in less than 2 years. That night, after their guests had left, Amelia and Lucas sat on the porch of their house, watching the stars and listening to the sounds of the night. "I have something to tell you," Amelia said softly. Lucas turned to her, his expression curious. "What is it? We are going to have a baby." "In about 6 months, I think." For a moment, Lucas just stared at her, his face a study in shock and joy. Then he let out a whoop of delight and pulled her into his arms, holding her as though she were made of glass. "A baby," he breathed. "Amelia, we are going to have a baby. Are you happy? Are you healthy? Do you need to see the doctor?" Amelia laughed at his sudden stream of questions. "I am very happy. I am healthy. And yes, I have already seen the doctor. He says everything looks normal." "This is the best anniversary gift you could have given me," Lucas said, his hand gently resting on her still flat stomach. "I am going to be a father. We are going to be a family." They already were a family, Amelia thought, but she understood what he meant. The child growing inside her was a symbol of everything they had built together, of the love they shared and the future they were creating. The pregnancy progressed smoothly, though Amelia found the summer heat difficult to bear as her body changed and grew. She continued to work at the shop for as long as she felt able, finally staying home full-time in her 8th month when the doctor insisted she needed rest. Clara had proven more than capable of managing the shop independently, and Amelia was grateful to have trained her so well. In early April of 1876, after a labor that was blessedly shorter than Amelia had feared, she gave birth to a son. They named him William Robert Newfield, after both their fathers, and Lucas cried when he held his son for the first time. "He is perfect," Lucas whispered, his finger gently touching the baby's tiny hand. "Amelia, you are amazing. Look at what we made." William was indeed perfect, with a shock of dark hair like his mother and blue eyes like his father. He was a healthy, hungry baby, and he transformed their lives completely. Amelia had worried that she would resent the interruption to her work, but she found instead that she loved being a mother. It was challenging and exhausting, but it was also joyful in ways she had not anticipated. Margaret was a frequent visitor, bringing advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. Sarah stopped by whenever she could, cooing over the baby and sharing news from town. The community that had welcomed Amelia when she arrived alone now embraced her growing family, and she felt truly at home in a way she never had in Boston. Lucas was a devoted father, helping with William whenever he could, and never complaining about interrupted sleep or the chaos a baby brought to their previously orderly home. He would sit for hours with his son, talking to him about the ranch and the horses, about the legacy they were building together. When William was 3 months old, Amelia began going back to the shop 1 or 2 days a week, bringing the baby with her. Clara was delighted to have an infant in the shop, and between the two of them, they managed to keep William happy while also serving customers. Amelia found that she could balance both roles, mother and businesswoman, especially with Lucas's support and Clara's help. The ranch continued to grow and prosper. Lucas expanded the herd and began breeding horses, discovering a talent for training that brought in additional income. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable and secure, building something solid that they could pass on to their children. Children, plural, because when William was just over a year old, Amelia found herself pregnant again. This pregnancy was harder than the first, with more fatigue and sickness, but it also felt familiar and less frightening. Their daughter was born in February of 1878, a tiny thing with her father's blue eyes and her mother's delicate features. They named her Catherine Rose, and Lucas cried again when he held her. "I never thought I could be this happy," he told Amelia as they lay together in bed, their daughter sleeping in a cradle beside them and William in his small bed across the room. "You and the children, this home we have built, it is more than I ever dreamed of." "I feel the same," Amelia said softly. "When I came west, I was so lost. I thought I just needed to prove I could survive alone, but you showed me that I could be strong and independent while also being part of something bigger than myself." Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. The children grew, healthy and happy. William was an active, curious boy who followed his father everywhere, learning about the ranch and the animals. Catherine was quieter, more contemplative, showing an early interest in the hats her mother made and the pretty things in the shop. The shop continued to thrive under Clara's increasingly independent management. Amelia maintained her ownership and still created the most elaborate custom pieces, but she had learned to delegate and trust in her employee. It allowed her the freedom to be both a businesswoman and a mother, to contribute to the family's income while also being present for her children. The years passed swiftly, marked by the rhythms of ranch life and the milestones of their growing family. William learned to ride almost before he could walk properly, showing a natural affinity for horses that delighted Lucas. Catherine proved to have her mother's eye for design and her father's patience, traits that would serve her well as she grew. In 1880, When Catherine was 2 and William was 4, Amelia found herself pregnant once more. This pregnancy was the easiest of the 3, and their second son was born in late November, arriving just before the holidays. They named him Henry James, and he proved to be a calm, easy baby who slept through the night almost from the beginning, to his exhausted parents' profound relief. Lucas built an addition to the house, adding more bedrooms for their growing family. The ranch now encompassed nearly 400 acres, purchased gradually as neighboring properties became available. They employed 2 ranch hands year-round and additional help during busy seasons. Amelia had sold her share of the hat shop to Clara, though she still created custom pieces from her workroom at home, enjoying the creative outlet while also being fully present for her family. Margaret's family had grown as well, and the cousins played together frequently, running wild across the hills and learning the ways of ranch life. Sarah had married her lawyer, and they had settled in Paso Robles, where Sarah's husband had become an important voice in town governance. The friendships that had sustained Amelia through her early days in California had only deepened over the years. One evening in the spring of 1885, Amelia and Lucas sat on their porch, watching their 3 children play in the yard. William was now 9, tall for his age and already showing signs of the man he would become. Catherine was 7, a serious little girl who loved helping in the kitchen and creating imaginary worlds for her dolls. Henry was 4, cheerful and adventurous, always getting into mischief but impossible to stay angry with. "You ever regret it?" Lucas asked suddenly. "Coming west, giving up the life you could have had in Boston?" Amelia turned to look at him, this man she loved more with each passing year. His face showed the marks of sun and wind, lines around his eyes from squinting against the bright California light and from laughing at his children's antics. His hair was still thick and dark, though she sometimes found silver threads when she ran her fingers through it. "Never," she said firmly. "Not for a single moment. Everything I lost, all the grief that drove me here, it brought me to you, to this life. How could I regret that? I think about the woman who stepped off that stagecoach 11 years ago," Lucas said. "So determined, so alone, refusing help but desperately needing it whether she would admit it or not. I fell in love with you that very first day, you know. I told myself I was just being helpful, but the truth is, I saw you and I knew my life was about to change." "I was so scared," Amelia admitted. "Of everything. Of failing, of succeeding, of being alone forever, of letting anyone get close enough to hurt me. And then there you were, offering to carry my trunks and looking at me like I was brave instead of terrified. You were brave. You are brave. You came west alone and built a life through sheer determination and skill. You did not need me, Amelia. You never needed me, but I like to think I made the journey a little easier." Amelia reached for his hand, threading her fingers through his. "You made it better than easy. You made it wonderful. You showed me that I could be independent and strong while also being part of a partnership. That choosing to share my life with someone did not make me weak or dependent. It made me richer." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the hills that had become home. William was teaching Catherine how to skip stones in the pond, while Henry chased a butterfly through the tall grass. "I received a letter from Clara today," Amelia said. "She is getting married in June, to that nice young man from the bank. That is wonderful news. You will want to make her something special, I imagine. I already have ideas. And Lucas, she asked if we would host the reception here at the ranch. Her family does not have much space, and she said our place has always felt like home to her. Of course we will host it. Clara is like family. We can set up tables under the oaks, and Margaret can help with the cooking." This was the life they had built together. A life of hard work and love, of community and family, of supporting each other through challenges and celebrating victories together. The ranch had become a gathering place for the people they loved, a symbol of the home they had created from determination and hope. As the children ran toward them, demanding dinner and attention, Amelia felt a profound sense of contentment. She had come west alone, a grieving young woman with nothing but her skills and her courage. Lucas had seen her that day, had offered help without condescension, had loved her without trying to diminish her independence. Together, they had built something beautiful. William tugged at Lucas's hand, asking about one of the new foals in the barn. Catherine climbed into Amelia's lap, despite being almost too big for it, and began chattering about a new dress for her doll. Henry announced that he was starving and might die if he did not eat immediately. Lucas caught Amelia's eye over the children's heads, and they shared a smile of perfect understanding. This was their life, chaotic and demanding and absolutely perfect. They had found each other against all odds, two lonely people learning that strength did not mean being alone. That night, after the children were in bed and the house was quiet, Lucas pulled Amelia into his arms. "I love you, Amelia Newfield," he said. "More than I did yesterday, less than I will tomorrow." "I love you too," Amelia replied. "Thank you for making sure I would never be alone again." "You were never truly alone," Lucas said gently. "You always had yourself and you have always been enough, but I am honored to walk beside you." As Amelia drifted off to sleep in her husband's arms, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The grief and loss, the terrifying leap into the unknown, the determination to build a life on her own terms. And then Lucas, offering help without expectation, seeing her strength and loving her for it, building a partnership that allowed her to be both independent and cherished. The years continued to flow by, each one bringing new challenges and joys. The children grew, each developing their own personalities and dreams. William indeed had his father's way with horses and talked about expanding their breeding program. Catherine discovered a love of teaching and began helping the younger children in town learn to read. Henry, true to his early nature, was a born storyteller and entertainer, keeping the family laughing with his tales and antics. The ranch prospered, becoming one of the most successful in the area. Lucas's reputation as a horseman spread, and people came from as far as San Francisco to purchase his stock. Amelia's custom hat work, though she now did it only occasionally, commanded premium prices, and she took pride in maintaining her skills even as her primary focus shifted to her family. In 1890, Amelia and Lucas celebrated their 15th anniversary. Their children planned a surprise party, coordinating with Margaret and Sarah to fill the house with family and friends. As Amelia looked around at the gathered crowd, at the life they had built together, she felt overwhelmed with gratitude. She caught sight of Lucas across the room, talking with his brother and laughing at some shared joke. He looked up as if sensing her gaze and smiled, that same warm smile that had captured her heart all those years ago. He excused himself and made his way to her side, taking her hand. "Happy anniversary, my love," he said. "Happy anniversary," Amelia replied. 15 years. Can you believe it?" "Best 15 years of my life," Lucas said firmly. "And I look forward to at least 50 more." "At least," Amelia agreed and kissed him, not caring that their children made exaggerated sounds of disgust, and the gathered friends laughed indulgently. They had come so far from that first meeting on a dusty street in Paso Robles. Amelia had been alone, determined to stay that way, building walls around her heart to protect herself from further pain. Lucas had been cautious, hurt by past rejection, afraid to hope for something real. But they had found each other, had taken the risk of loving despite their fears, and had built a life richer than either could have imagined. As the party continued around them, Lucas pulled Amelia onto the porch, wanting a moment alone with his wife. The evening was cool and pleasant, the air filled with the sounds of laughter from inside and the peaceful sounds of the ranch settling down for the night. "You remember what you told me that day I proposed?" Lucas asked. "Out on this land when I asked you to build a life with me." "I remember everything about that day," Amelia said. "I said yes. You also said you were terrified, that you had come west to be independent to prove you did not need anyone. I remember. You did prove it," Lucas said. "You proved you could build a successful business, manage on your own, thrive without depending on anyone. But Amelia, you also proved something else. You proved that you could be independent and strong while also being part of a partnership. You never gave up who you were. You just made room for me too." Amelia felt tears prick her eyes. After 15 years, Lucas could still make her feel cherished and understood in a way no one else ever had. "You made room for me too," she said softly. "You had your own walls, your own fears. But you opened your heart and let me in. We healed each other, Lucas." "We did," he agreed, "and we built something beautiful together." The years continued their steady march. William eventually married a lovely young woman from a neighboring ranch, and they built a house on the far side of the Newfield property, working alongside Lucas to continue expanding the horse breeding program. Catherine surprised everyone by deciding to go to San Francisco for teachers' college, returning 2 years later with a certificate and a burning passion to improve education in Paso Robles. Henry, true to his creative nature, discovered a talent for writing and began sending pieces to newspapers and magazines. Lucas and Amelia's hair turned silver, their faces lined by years of laughter and hard work. The ranch that had started as Lucas's dream had become a family legacy, worked by their son and eventually their grandchildren. The hat shop that Amelia had built from determination and skill had helped establish Clara and provided an income that gave the family security during lean years. But more than the land or the business, Lucas and Amelia had built a family bound by love and respect. They had shown their children that strength came in many forms, that independence did not mean isolation, and that choosing to love someone was not weakness but courage. In 1900, as the new century dawned, Lucas and Amelia sat on their porch watching their first great-grandchild, William's daughter's baby, taking wobbly steps across the yard. They were both in their late 50s now, still active and healthy but feeling the weight of years in ways they had not when young. "We have been blessed," Amelia said softly, "more than I ever thought possible." "We have," Lucas agreed. And it all started with a brave woman stepping off a stagecoach, determined to build a life on her own. And a kind cowboy who saw that woman and decided to make sure she was never alone again, Amelia added. "You were never alone after that day," Lucas said. "Even before you agreed to marry me, you were part of this community, building friendships and connections. I did not make you not alone. I just made sure you knew you did not have to be." It was a subtle distinction, but an important one. Amelia had built her own support network, created her own place in Paso Robles. Lucas had not rescued her or completed her. He had simply walked beside her, supporting her journey and sharing his own. As the sun set over the California hills, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Amelia leaned against Lucas's shoulder and counted her blessings. A loving husband, healthy children and grandchildren, a legacy that would outlive them both. She had come west with nothing but grief and determination, and she had built a life beyond anything she could have imagined. "I love you, Lucas Newfield," she said. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." "I love you too, Amelia Newfield," he replied. "Today, tomorrow, and forever." Their story had begun with a woman alone on a dusty street and a cowboy who offered help. It had grown into a love that spanned decades, a partnership that produced children and grandchildren, and a legacy that would endure for generations. They had proven that strength and love were not opposites, but complements, that independence and partnership could coexist, and that sometimes the bravest thing you could do was open your heart and let someone walk beside you. The evening deepened around them, stars beginning to appear in the darkening sky. Inside the house, they could hear the sounds of family, multiple generations gathered for Sunday dinner as had become tradition. Soon someone would call them in to eat, and they would join the cheerful chaos of their extended family. But for now, they sat together in the quiet, two people who had found each other when they most needed it, and had built something beautiful from loneliness and hope. The woman had come west alone, but the cowboy had made sure she would never be alone again. And in doing so, he had ensured that he would never be alone either. They had saved each other, loved each other, and built a life together that would echo through generations. It was, Amelia thought as Lucas squeezed her hand gently, the best possible ending to a story that had begun in grief and fear. No, not an ending. A continuation, because their love lived on in their children and grandchildren, in the ranch they had built and the community they had helped shape. They had come west as broken individuals and had forged themselves into something stronger together. And as they finally rose to join their family for dinner, walking hand in hand as they had for more than 25 years, they knew that whatever years remained to them would be filled with this same love, this same partnership, this same joy. The woman had come west alone, but she had found a home, a family, and a love that would last beyond their mortal years. And the cowboy had found his purpose, his joy, and his reason for being in the brave woman who had stepped off that stagecoach so many years ago. Their story was one of courage and love, of independence and partnership, of building something beautiful from the ashes of loss. And it was a story that would be told for generations, inspiring others to take risks, open their hearts, and believe in the possibility of love even in the midst of grief. The evening star shone bright in the western sky as Lucas and Amelia walked into their home, surrounded by the noise and warmth of family, grateful for every moment that had led them to this place, this life, this love.